What is going on? Welcome to the It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike, also known as the EOD Happy Captain on X, formerly known as Twitter. Today, I'm sitting down with Chris Weakley, a former explosive ordnance disposal technician turned actor now living in LA. So let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by Hots and Cots, a review-style app that allows service members to review the quality of where they live, where they eat, and the quality of the facilities on their installation. If you live on base or you live in the dorms, you definitely need to check this app out. If you're a leader, you should totally see how your people are living. Let's get started. What is going on right now? I'm sitting down with Chris Weakley, a former EOD tech. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm excited just to finally get it on the books.
Yeah, man, for sure. Why don't you do me a favor? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in the military.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not one of these people that came in as EOD. I had started as infantry first, made a deployment to Iraq with 4th ID back in 2005, 2006, and that there kind of guided me towards the eventual transition from going from infantry to EOD. And a good friend of mine was killed by a roadside bomb July 24th, 2006, and so that kind of made this like dramatic impact on me, where I knew I needed to do something a little bit more than just infantry. So at that point, I decided to come back and start looking at EOD school. And a buddy of mine was like, "Let's do it." So we went. I ended up passing, and went up to Fort Drum, and he ended up failing out in tools, and we both went to Fort Drum, and somehow I was rewarded with Fort Drum for passing EOD school, and he was rewarded with Fort Drum for failing out of EOD school. And my company I was in, 725th EOD company, supported 10th Mountain, and we went out to Iraq and did the deployment out there, and learned a lot, and learned about the training mission, and learning about Iraq EOD. And I came back and decided I needed to get a little bit warmer, so I went out to Fort Carson, deployed with 764th again. Came back from that deployment and trying to figure out where and what I wanted to do. And then at that point, I was fortunate enough to do the VIP out at the White House. And while I was there, I hurt my shoulder, and that ended up being the cause for me getting out. Was there's just so many problems with it not healing properly. And I got out and decided to go work a job up in DC at a defense intelligence agency, and worked there for a little more than 2 years. And at that point, figured I needed to go to college, and went to college, and which is where I kind of got involved in theater and the whole acting thing, and which just kind of like came out of nowhere. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is super involved in the arts, and still working my normal job, and trying to get the acting in while I can.
Yeah, man, I saw your debut on All Rise, your speaking role. I thought that was pretty awesome.
That was so cool, just to do the whole experience. I had done some theater, some short films, some non-union stuff, but like this was like for me like the major leagues, network TV. I got a paycheck from Warner Brothers, and I got at the time we had to still do COVID tests, so I had to go to Warner Brothers lot, which was like, oh my god, I'm on the Warner Brothers lot, and here I am, nervous taking this COVID test, because if I test positive, then I'm not going to have the role anymore, and then I'm just going to look incredibly dumb. But it obviously didn't happen that way. And the whole experience on that day of filming with the 2 guest stars, the director, the writer, and was just a kind of like a childhood dream, and an amazing experience, and a lot more than what I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, let's back up a little bit though. So you joined the Army in 2004. I'm going to assume right out of high school, right?
100% right out of high school.
And so what made you want to join the Army?
So I was definitely not one of those straight into college type of people. I knew if I had gone out of high school, like I did fine in high school, did well, but no direction, no desire of where I wanted to go. And I kind of had an idea, but really wasn't sure. So I didn't really want to go to college and then have this is really not what I want type of situation. So then I, thought I wanted to be like, oh, let me go be a ranger or Green Beret. So I went in as infantry and, did one deployment as the infantry. And I was like, whew, no, this is, I need something a little bit more than this. And nothing against infantry. Like I know some of the smartest guys I've ever met have been, been infantry, but I just needed something a little bit more engaging for me, which is how I ended up a little gravitating towards EOD.
So you'd spoken about losing your buddy on that deployment as an infantry guy. What were your experiences with EOD like on that deployment?
That's kind of like where I'd like really even learned like that it was even a job. Obviously in my mind, like the perception is, oh yeah, there's bomb squad, but there's a very big difference between bomb squad and EOD and like the focus and experience and the training and whatnot. And there was actually an EOD guy that had been killed on that deployment. So I had kind of also seen that aspect of what happens when close knit units and, MOSs that don't have a lot of guys, suffer a casualty like that, especially a team leader. So it was definitely an interesting experience to just kind of get their perspective on how they did things. And this is also still pretty fresh in, beginning of Iraq, and, things aren't really what they are now versus in terms of armored vehicles, security measures, stuff like that. So it was definitely interesting to see how things were there as an infantry guy on the ground and seeing EOD guys operating on the ground in 2005, 2006 versus my time, in 2009 and 10, 2012, even as I got out and seeing the different technology that had, made it safer for our job and, had given us a leg up.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I mean, I did the 2010-11 deployment out of Campbell, and then again in 13. So I think we were going back and forth
Yeah,
maybe as far
definitely.
as who was there. But looking at all the advances in equipment, all the advances in TTPs that we're utilizing at the time, and kind of being on the ground as they were getting created and used, definitely an experience to say the least. What was your experience like going through this schoolhouse? I know there was a high attrition rate when you and I both went through. And so it's nerve wracking, right? Having a previous MOS that you may or may not want to go back to. But, what was that experience like for you?
No, it was definitely what you just said is like, I don't want to go back to being infantry because then you have to like go back and it's like, well, what happened? And it's like, well, it was too hard or whatever, some other excuse, I'm sure people, end up making to, why they, didn't make it or didn't use study hall effectively or, didn't put enough effort in. And that was definitely like my mindset was like, I don't want to go back to being infantry. I just want to like change over and just, find this career field that, all these EOD guys that I had spoken to, especially when I had to do my bomb suit test, the chem suit test, my interview, and meeting the guys at the unit because I was at Fort Hood when I did all of that, and so it was definitely a I'm not leaving here without being an EOD tech. So for me, it was finding a way to make it work, no matter what I had to do. I'd spend extra time in study hall, just no me time. It was just do whatever you got to do to pass the test.
No, 100%. I mean, I was the same way going through school. It was very much I'm here to get an EOD badge and I have to get an EOD badge. So I came in as an 18 X-ray. So I'd already failed out of one MOS, right? I tried to be a special forces candidate.
Yeah,
It didn't go well for me. So it was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to be the guy that shows up to an infantry line unit who is just a complete failure, right? Right out the gate, like
yeah,
an 18 X-ray failure, an EOD failure. So, I totally get it. Like that is the only choice. But I mean, you graduated in 2009
yeah.
and then you pretty much immediately were deployed, right?
Yeah, so we deployed at the end of pretty much the start of winter at Fort Drum. So I was fortunate. I was like, yes, I passed winter. I'm not gonna have to be there for winter. We're gonna be gone. We'll come back. It'll be summertime, and then that's when we got back from that deployment. Is when I was like, oh my god, like I've never been so cold or seen so much snow in my entire life.
Where were you at in 2009?
I can't remember the name, but it was an Iraqi base, and like we were just doing a training mission there, somewhere in like the Baghdad area. The name just kind of like slips. It's kind of like
No,
getting
you're good.
older. It's like I just don't remember some of those you know, details quite as much anymore. Actually, I think it was Al
So,
Rashid. Al Rashid, I think, was the name of the place.
all right. Yeah, I never got to do Iraq. I did Afghanistan a couple times, and of course, you know what? You came back to drum and then re-enlisted for Fort Carson, right?
Yeah, I did. I needed to get out of there and go somewhere new, and some of the places I'd been looking at didn't have any slots available. So I was like, "What about this one?" And they're like, "Yep." And off I went and picked up, and went out there, and it wasn't long after I got there that same situation. It was like, "Let's get ready to go on another deployment." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good to me." And then deployed to Afghanistan, and did that whole mission, and that was definitely a unique experience. And seeing that part of the United States, or part of the world, is something I'd never seen before, especially some of those 14ers that are out there in this beautiful landscape. And just seeing some of the remnants of Russians when they were there in the 80s. So, which was wild to
Yeah.
me, just to talk to Afghans. They're like, "Yeah, we remember when the Russians were here." And I'm just like, "Oh my god, I remember when the Russians were here." Like, it's something I never thought you know I would hear. um it's like some
Where
Red
were
Dawn type of thing.
where were you at in 2012?
I was in RC East. um I'm trying to Kogiani is the name of the district that our fob was in. So I was trying to remember the name of the fob, but again, same thing. I'm sure, like,
No,
as the
you're good.
conversation, it would jog my my memory, but I just cannot remember it. It was named after a former soldier who had also been killed, so his name was like a memorial name
Okay.
after someone.
Yeah, I did. I spent two deployments out in RCE, so it was a pretty kinetic area, both in 2010, 11, then again in 13. So I imagine I bookended your deployment there. So I imagine yours was pretty busy as well in RC East.
Yeah, we definitely stayed busy for most of the deployment, and then towards the end, when like winter was definitely starting to come, you could
Oh
definitely
yeah.
see, like, that trend of them hopping to the other side of the border, and essentially, like, just kind of died down, and we just kind of waited till our replacements got there, and then kind of left seat right seat, and off we went, came back.
So you had mentioned during your introduction, you were talking about getting spent some time at the White House, in official capacity as an explosive ordnance disposal technician. Can you kind of tell me what that was like and what that mission was?
Yeah, so that was a super cool experience. It's probably one of the coolest things that I can honestly say I got to do in the Army. Again, went to high school in Florida, just didn't really wasn't exposed to a lot there. But so eventually, doing all this stuff, infantry, the deployments, going to EOD school, and ending up there as one of the team leaders. It was such a unique experience. Like, it's very sometimes hard for me to describe what it was like. We do the teams do their shifts, come on and come off. And, there were teams that came from different places. So it was just me and my team member, and then, two other guys, and, two other, guys. And, me and one of the team members on one of the other teams ended up becoming like really good friends. And he's actually down at the schoolhouse now, Kevin Brown. So he is down there, and we hung out a couple times outside of after that happening. And just being there on call and getting an experience, a tour of the White House by the curator of the White House, was an amazing experience, like something I would never thought of. And I always try to tell people, if you have the opportunity to go to the White House through your representative, or your senator, definitely try to make it happen, because it's a one in a lifetime experience. There's so much history that's happened there, and you see so much art, some decor, some furniture, stuff that's been there, since the beginning. So just being able to do that, and just seeing, how Secret Service operates, and um, seeing the whole grounds, and seeing how they utilize us, and, what to do, and kind of learning to navigate all of the different um, police departments, law enforcement agencies. And it is very much everybody knows where their boundary line is, and getting to experience how everyone is very territorial when it comes to, like, nope, my line is here, your line is here, my line is over there, your line is over there. So that was
Yeah.
definitely an interesting experience. And, I think some people would just find it sometimes boring because not a lot is happening, but just the ability of like, oh, we went to go use the White House bowling alley. Like, something I would never have thought I would have ever said growing up. I'm going to use the White House bowling alley. Like, that's just kind of like a dream come true. And, I didn't even have it on a bucket list because I didn't think it would even be possible to be added to my bucket list. So it's an interesting experience. It's usually just a lot of waiting around, waiting to be asked to be done something. And, they put us up in some pretty nice accommodations, and get to experience DC and do all the historical stuff in the immediate area on our days off. So that was cool. And, just meeting interesting, new, cool people.
What do you think you would have done if you hadn't joined the army?
I probably would have been an EMT or a firefighter. That I did EMT school as a senior in high school. So did the EMT school, but as it got closer, I was just like, I just didn't know if that's something I would want to do forever type of situation. I did this thing called the Fire Explorers, where you could do like ride-alongs and pretty much help them do like minor first aid stuff. And then once I got to EMT school and was going through that and doing the ambulance ride-alongs, that I was like, okay, yeah, I could see myself doing this. But like as I finished and graduated, I was like, I don't know if this is like quite what I want, long term. So I kind of looked at some other options, and I was like, yeah, let's go do this instead. I'm probably not going to go to college, for a 4-year degree right away. So why not, go get the GI Bill and, have a means of getting myself through college when I decide to hang it up.
Right. And then obviously, you got out after a shoulder injury. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about that process, right? What's that like making the transition out, especially when you had planned on staying in just a little bit longer, but then making a decision to get out. What
Yeah.
was that process like?
So it essentially came down like the doc's like, I've done everything I can to try to make it better. It's just sometimes it just doesn't heal right. And he's like, do you just want to get out? And I was like, let's just get out, because I was getting to the point where it's like I would probably have to reclass to something else. And it's like I didn't want to do anything else that wouldn't be on the same level as EOD, which would be like going to one of the special mission units or going to SFAS. It wasn't going to happen with the injury. So I was like, let's just get out of here. And at that point it was all right, we'll start the paperwork. And the paperwork starts going along, and it goes to the medical evaluation board, and they're like, yep, looks good, everything, let's get you out of here, and on your honorable discharge. And essentially it's pretty much there's the door. And best of luck. And luckily there was a lot of good opportunities there, whether it was classes and networking events, resume workshops. So there was like a lot of stuff to help me. But I was fortunate enough where I had met enough EOD guys, and that was super helpful, that were like, hey, we can probably get you a job here if you're interested. I was like, yes, please. And so, I picked up and moved out to DC and started at the Defense Intelligence Agency as an intel analyst. And, kind of, that was my foray into back to DC after being there, TDY for working at the White House. So now I was actually living there and can experience a little bit more of the national capital region. So,
But like, explain to me how you go from being a DIA analyst to Hollywood and aspiring actor to actually getting screen time. Like, where does that happen? Like,
yeah.
how do you go from an analyst to an actor?
So I almost came out here. And it was so funny. It's like my friend whose TV show that I'm on, I actually met him through Twitter. Pretty much how our same interactions. This is like when it was called Twitter, not X. And so I was looking at coming out to transferring to USC or Loyola, but my stepdad was really, really sick, and this is like right before he passed away. I was looking at coming out here, and my mom was just like, "Hey, can you, not move out to the West Coast?" They were living out at the time, living a little north of Jacksonville, in this place called Amelia Island. And so I was like, yeah, all right, let me look at some places that are here or closer to them where I could still get a really good education and I could still pursue, acting, because I was starting to kind of get that, I'm like, oh yeah, this is finally a time that I can take an interest in it, and have the ability to go to acting classes or do theater, something that really wasn't available while I was in the Army, because whether it's on VIPs or in the field or just on emergency response, all of these different things that kind of like get in the way of, kind of doing things that you want to do or always wanted to do. And so I looked at two colleges, Georgia Tech and Emory University in Atlanta, and ended up going to Emory University in Atlanta. And when I got down there, it was really weird because I was the only undergrad veteran there. So for me, I was like, there's no one here for me to hang out with, because all the other veterans were in the MBA program. And so it's like they have families, they're working, they have kids, wife and whatever. And, I'm just like, I'll just hang out by myself. And, fortunate enough, I had met some other people outside of college, and I had finally decided to take my first theater class. And that was extremely eye-opening, because in my mind, I'm just like, oh, you just get out there and say some lines to the person in the scene with you. Like, it can't be that hard. And it was definitely knocked me down a couple pegs, because it does take a lot more. And especially when it comes to theater, when you have to regulate your voice, and you don't want to get vocal fry and damage your vocal cords, so you have to learn to be able to speak and breathe, so people in the very back in the rafters can hear you, because outside of Broadway, you're not going to be using a microphone. It's just your normal voice. So I started doing theater there, and I had gotten into a program outside of college, using a specific method. It's called Meisner method, and you're essentially just learning to just be truthful, like in the moment. And that is what really got me into acting. And I was like, oh my God, I love how this is making me feel, because it was an environment where it was just 12 people, the teacher, and this environment where I could kind of express how I was feeling, and I was only veteran in there, so like I was just kind of allowing things to come out in a safe environment of like, this is how it makes me feel, this is why I'm always angry. And it was definitely interesting because we had some other people in the class could like cry really easy. I'm like, why can't I do that? I can get mad and angry really easy, but just crying just wasn't there for me. I just kind of had pushed so many emotions away, especially after another good friend of mine died on my deployment in 2012. So I kind of pushed away all these emotions, and learning to let some of those emotions come out was definitely a long and interesting, sometimes frustrating experience, because it's like, I want immediate results now. It's like, all right, I RSP this IED or UXO, and the response is immediate. Either it worked or it didn't. This is just not that simple. It's very much over time. And that's kind of like what really got me into the arts aspect. And the other thing that had kind of put me towards that is Adam Driver, when he was in the Marines, got out and, went to Juilliard, and now he's, a major actor. And he did a TED Talk where he talks about the arts and its impact on him, and, how beneficial he thinks it is. And I was fortunate enough he had a charity at the time called Arts in the Armed Forces, where they would get, active duty and veterans involved in the arts and showing the benefit of the arts, and they were fundraising. And this last time, 2 years ago, I went and ran the New York City Marathon after fundraising some money for his charity. And they do a play after the next day, and I see the play, and I'm the last person to like ask a question. I'm just telling them like, hey, like, yeah, like this, your TED Talk had huge impact on me, and getting involved in the arts and theater. And I'm getting teared up and starting to cry, and I'm like, oh my God, look cool, like you don't want to don't cry type of situation, but just kind of let it out. And I had an amazing response from the 1,500 people that were in the audience and the cast on the stage. And then afterwards, I got to spend a few minutes with him, and he's like, this is I told him, I was like, this is life impacting. The arts has just been kind of pushed me in a new direction, and had this interesting experience. And like, talking to all the different casts afterwards, like how beautiful it was, and thank you for sharing. And after we had left, about 15 minutes later, James Laporta calls me and is like, "Hey, I heard you were just waterworks were going in front of Adam Driver in this theater." I'm like, dude, like that just happened. Like, how did you even know about that? He was like, yeah, well, I heard somebody else was like, hey, there was this EOD guy talking about like the arts and acting, and they're wondering if you knew him. And that's when Laporta called me and was like, is this you? Because I'm pretty sure it's you. And I go, yes, it's me. So
Yeah, Laporta knows everything.
He did. I had literally, I was like, dude, it just happened. It just happened. Like not even 15 minutes ago. And this dude's calling me, asking me if this was me. And I mean, it was. So
yeah, Laporta with the breaking news, as
He
always.
definitely had like the breaking news story. It's just like, damn, you had like this place wired.
So, the transition into Hollywood, right? Into, being on a TV show, right? All Rise,
Yeah.
you got your first speaking role. Super excited for you. I watched that when it came out on TV.
Yeah, you did.
Took a selfie with it, right? Where I was like, "Hey, I know this guy, right?
Yeah.
This is pretty awesome."
And now you're, and then I sent you that picture, the thing my mom made of like, I sent her the picture that you sent me. So now you're hanging on my wall for all time now of you pointing to me on a TV. So just let you know you are on my wall now.
Perfect, and you can think of me fondly always.
Yes.
So what's next, man? What do you think? Obviously, what do you think is next?
I don't know. Like it's just like I'm still doing the acting classes and going out for auditions and looking at getting theater, but I'm at the same time I'm trying to I just got accepted to grad school, so I'm gonna go to grad school at USC here, and at this time I'm also gonna try to start looking at all the things that I kind of want to do ahead. I always put off to the side, and that's finish grad school and kind of working, but it's also enabling me to do writing. I like writing a lot, and I'm very fortunate to have a lot of successful writers around me who have been very kind and guided me on the direction, because I took screenwriting in college, but like it's a little bit different reading from a book and sitting in a classroom versus people who are actually out there and doing it right as we speak. And they've been very kind to look over my stuff and offer me notes and suggest going in certain directions, or looking at a classical text as how to write drama and good dialogue, because it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I was just like, oh yeah, just write some dialogue. Next Academy Award winner, me. No, writing good dialogue is really hard, and the only way to write good dialogue is write bad dialogue, and then to surround yourself with people who are willing to critique you and help, not to say, hey, this thing is terrible, but then also like, this is why it's terrible and this is how you can make it better. So I've really gone into like the writing aspect of it, and I want to eventually be in a position where I can help get things made for people that traditionally don't have a voice, because I've seen what it's like for certain people to not have a voice in the Hollywood picture. And it is a reality, and I see it here, and there's some stuff we have going on with this property I'm trying to buy with my buddy, and how he's getting treated versus how I'm getting treated are two separate different things. And I definitely want to help get more original stories out there, especially like everyone always just talks about The Hurt Locker. It's just like, oh, what do you think about the movie The Hurt Locker? Like,
it's the best movie ever created. What are you talking about?
I enjoy it for what it is. It's entertaining. And so, showing that, there's such amazing stories that people have, with, that are EOD, that like this would make a great documentary, or doing a documentary about EOD, or what it's actually like versus the perception in movies and TV. Because it's one thing that I ran into in college, especially being the only undergrad vet, was the perception is just off of what you see on the news or the TV, TV shows or movies. It's not what it actually is, versus, the reality. And the reality is, it is a high danger job. There are consequences, but there's a lot of stuff that we do to make it safer, and the things that we do and experience. And, the working at the White House, or like, oh, I now know how to render safe an unexploded piece of ordnance, or I can look at something and be like, yeah, I know what that is based off of the markings, the size, the shape, some of the damage. Same thing when it comes to looking at fragmentation and looking at cross threading. And I never thought I would be able to do that. And I think it'd be an interesting movie to talk about. Just like, there is a lot more than just cutting the red wire or cutting the black wire, because that's just what people think is the interesting part. But the interesting part is knowing the ordinance and knowing the safeties, and seeing how much goes into EOD as a whole. I think is super interesting, and kind of finding stories that are like that, and having somebody that likes movies helping get movies made versus, hey, let's just make the most money we can out of this.
So, looking back on it, you've had some loss, you've had a lot of experience in the military and also out. Would you do it all again? I mean, would you join the military again?
For sure. Because what I have ended up in theater, and the people I've met through acting, and they are people that help me keep grounded when I'm stressed out or anxious or sad or angry or whatever. Those are the people that help me keep me grounded from, we do see awful things and experience awful things. And, I wouldn't change doing all of that again because of the theater and the impact that theater has had on me, and something that I try to share with other people of, hey, it's non-traditional therapy. It's an environment where nobody is there to judge you however you're feeling, whether it be, angry or sad or whatever. I wouldn't change any of that, because it's made me a better communicator. I listen better, I speak better, I can talk about how I'm feeling. I just don't let it, sit and stew, where it just blows up and nothing productive comes out of it. And I would do it again, over and over and over, and it was like the same life and outcomes. And, I wouldn't be upset with that. I've liked the life I have, and, I've grateful experiences, and, the theater has, been super kind and helpful, and just made me an all around better person.
Nah, it's amazing, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. I'm super excited for your future. I'm super
Yeah.
excited to see what you do next, whether it's acting or writing. You just seem to be always one of those guys that I cross paths with, in my career, right? So I look forward to seeing you, hopefully this May, right, 2024
Yeah.
in
So
Florida
I'm
for the
definitely
EOD
going to try to,
Memorial Ball.
yeah, I'm going to try to make it out to the ball, and we'll have some more good news about, like, oh, this is coming out, or, whatever. So yeah, the ball will definitely be interesting. So we can, move from, internet friends I've talked to off of Twitter to actually hanging out in person. I can add it to the list of people who turn out to be just as cool in person as they were online.
No, I appreciate it. Twitter's turned out to be a blessing in disguise, right? People talk
Yeah.
about what a hellscape it is, but I got to be honest, my experiences have been pretty phenomenal so far, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today, dude. I look forward to bumping into you, man.
No problem. And thanks for having me. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the future, and we'll have a little bit more, behind me, and, hopefully one day get you out to one of these sets, and you can see, how the sausage is made kind of situation, and, all the hard work that goes into making it, and whatnot.
Dude, I'd love that. Thank you so much, man. You have a
Yeah,
great day. All right.
definitely. You too.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today. If you like what you saw, please shoot me a follow. I look forward to seeing you back here next time on the It's a Blast podcast.